Keep looking.
That's one way to look at it.
This is like investigative journalism.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
You're joining at a relatively positive time
Oh, I
compared to the
know.
way it was.
Yeah,
The great financial crisis, this place was a disaster.
that's right. Oh, 2008. 2008 was terrible.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
Good
hello,
evening.
sir.
Hi, how are you? I did
All right.
this.
We printed this big sheet
Paul Callaghan.
because it has this. Yes, nice to hear you.
How are you?
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to
We'll start with that.
total.
Nice to see you. Please, I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask Ms. Scott to please call the roll.
Babcock, Callaghan,
Here?
McGill, Neely,
Here.
Tarazinski,
Here.
Washington,
Here.
4 present.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Although the city council has approved these minutes already as a normal course of business, we also must approve these minutes. And they are the minutes of the Finance Advisory Committee meeting from October 19th of 2022, the minutes of the Special Joint City Council and Finance Advisory Committee of November 21st, 2022, and the minutes of the Special Joint City Council and Finance Advisory Committee of August 21st, 2023. Can we approve those as a group?
You can, yes.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second?
I'll second, sure.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Do we have any public participation? Okay. We have no old business, and now let's begin our new business, and please fill us in.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Bill.
Did you have time to go through all the numbers, and you got the packet? So,
Several times, and I'm still working.
all right. So, well, and good evening, everybody. We have quite the showing we've got 2 aldermen in the House. We have a lot of staff here to answer questions. And I think at this point, we could it's up to you, members of the commission, but try to be a little less formal in this, but to encourage questions and answers. This is Paul, and I'll just speak to you on this because it's kind of your first time around this sequence. So there's a joint meeting. It has traditionally been a joint meeting between the council and the Finance Advisory Commission in mid-August, which is just about 2 months after our audit in its final form, and we're on a calendar year, as you can see, is ready for presentation to the City Council. So in that 60 days, sometimes a little less, we pull together, we've had some conversation, but the audit is very telling in terms of where we ended the year and what's likely to happen in terms of revenues especially. So we have a pretty roll up the sleeves kind of meeting in August, mid-August, and from there, the concepts that we had presented, if they're generally supported in terms of revenues and expenditures for our operating and some of the key capital funds, we start working then on a major budget document. We still don't have that document done, but we have a lot more numbers now. And here's just for the members of the commission and members of the audience, and I think there are people actually viewing us tonight. Is that correct?
Yes.
Here's what we're trying to do tonight. So since mid-August, here we are in mid-October, another 60 days on, we've been able to get down with all of the city's departments into some very fine-tuned numbers, both on the personnel side, which is always the largest side of the spending piece for a public sector organization like ours, and also on the capital side and some of our enterprise funds. So we're going to go through those. I'm going to rapidly go through those because although I'm happy to say, although numbers have changed somewhat, generally speaking, particularly on the operating side, I gave you a 2-page little handout. There's some paper at your desk. And there are 2 sheets to it. One is this 5-year presentation of FY22 through FY27 with a lot of round numbers. And the audience doesn't have this, but I have that for where we were in August and where we are in October, and it's very close, particularly in terms of fund balance and so forth. We've been rigorous in trying to have a disciplined presentation tonight that's in line with what your thinking was in the councils at that time. Okay, so let's dig in. With me tonight, Susan Hallman, who's our Director of Financial Services, Megan Challen, who is our Senior Accountant, and our department heads. We'll do our best to fill you in on where we think we're going to be from an operating standpoint. As part of that discussion, we want to touch on the proposed levy, the city levy for this year, and we'd like your comments on that, because next Monday night, we'll be asking the council to weigh in, and they like to know what your recommendations are. All right. As we did in mid-August, I start off my background to you for tonight's meeting, talking about the major general fund revenues. I'm not going to recapitulate them. They're on page 2. What you see on page 2 constitutes 70% of all of the revenue for our operating services in the course of the proposed calendar year. It is no surprise to members of the commission, but Paul, you're just kind of getting acquainted with the fact that we have one structural challenge in terms of revenue in the general operations side of things, and that's the downstate pension crisis. We've talked about that publicly for years now. The fact that we've had some very significant growth in our EAV on the south side helps us a little bit, not dramatically, but a little bit in terms of our own property tax capacity. And what all that meant, though, this year is it doesn't mean that we're able to spend property tax revenues that will come in next year on anything but the pension obligations. But we're going to have to spend a little bit less out of our pocket beyond the property tax, if you will. So every penny of property tax dollars that might be collected for the city of DeKalb, just the city organization, in 2023 will be devoted to state fire and police pension funds. And in addition to that, on page 3, highlighted in yellow, or that looks like gold now, I guess, from the photocopying, are the numbers that have to be provided each year, and this year it's about $1,350,000 and change out of other general revenues, sales tax, use taxes, fines, fees, and all the rest to meet our obligations. Yes, Lynn.
While we're on page 3, I was wondering if there were a short, easy idea of you could give of what this open amortization model is.
Yeah, we could have a whole evening on that, actually, and it's, there are models out there that are under discussion at the state level, and in both in the combined the boards of the combined fire funds and the board of the combined police funds.
Oh, okay,
So-
I know what
No,
you're
but
talking
that's-
about now.
But anyway,
Okay.
so open meaning, so what we have right now is a closed system. It's basically like, you want to start paying down the unfunded obligation, but what we had been doing for a long time is basically, it's like, not unlike, this maybe isn't the best example, but if you have a credit card and you've got a rising balance and you just pay the interest on it. You're going to pay the interest, and it's going to be a little bit more next year and the year after that, but the principal obviously has not been defeased, and you are going to, if you could go along like that for a long time and find, even though your unfunded liabilities are growing, if there was no time limit on when you had to make up the difference and get to be at a certain level, in our case, according to state law, 90% funded by 2040, we could maybe coast a little bit on that. But now we have what they call in these circles a ramp, because the little bit we were paying off now has to be a lot more every year until we get to 2040 and you hit that 90% mark. It's probably going to happen that the state will kick the can down the road in the spring session and go to 2050, which helps some. As you look at that shortfall, the gold highlighted number, the 1 million, so maybe next year it might be about that. It very seldom goes down. The reason it went down this year is that in my proposal, in terms of what we could levy, you'll see that I've asked for just that amount that covers our 100% funding of our annual obligation as defined by actuaries who do this all day long, know exactly what we should do, both in terms of the number of people we have and where they are in the progress toward their pension. Okay, we could chase ourselves on this, but is this okay if?
Yeah, I'm with you now.
All right, I'm just going to talk very generally about the revenues, which haven't changed much in expectations. We took some time in the narrative to explain, about what the percentage increases are expected to be with state income tax for the sales tax, various sales taxes and use taxes. If you have any questions about that, I'll stop. If not, I'll just keep going. I'm going to come back to the levy in just a moment. On the spending side of the general fund, as we introduced to the council in August and to the joint meeting of the council and the FAC, the biggest initiative in 2024 and on is the construction of a fourth fire station and the staffing of that, which will be a process that will take some time, probably a year to year and a half on the building side, and we have to be ready when the building's done to staff it. In connection with the building side, we talked in August about this. The council followed up in September with a couple of actions. One was to agree on an architectural engineering firm that would help with the design of that. And then the other part was just here in the last couple of weeks, we committed to a bond to raise the money, which was estimated to be about $4.2 million to build that building. We already have the land that was dedicated to us back in 2002. So that was prescient on the part of another council and commission long ago, but it still will cost real money to do that, and the biggest cost will obviously be to staff that and staff it at a level that meets the turnout needs of that district. So just last week, 10 days ago, we were pleased to know that Moody's gave us an upgrade in our bond rating, and tickled about that actually. And the pricing of the bond, we went into the market last week, and I suppose just as happy we were to learn that there was a lot of demand for our bond. Here's what seems to be a really safe investment, and we had more bidders than we had bonds to sell. And today, the final pricing sheets were, I was telling Tom just before the meeting, were sent over just between 4:30 and 5, and I didn't have time to digest them. I would have given you a good idea what the rates were, what the average rate was that we got for those. So we're ready to do that. On the spending side, on the staffing side.
I'm sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you, but while we're talking about those interest rates, perhaps I wasn't paying close enough attention, but on the bottom of page 7,
Okay.
about the true interest cost on the new bonds here is stated as 3.8.
About 3.8. That's what. And
Right, and I let's see, where was the language here?
The reference to what we're getting in the, from the treasurer?
Well, no, it was how, 3.8 just sounds so astoundingly low.
Yeah.
But we,
Uh,
yeah?
It's a, well, it is, it's, so this is a municipal bond, so it's in its class by itself, right?
Right.
And if you've been following the bond market in the last month or so, it's whipsawing.
Yeah.
Rates are bouncing around, but that is, as I, at a glance, so the bonds themselves, I have every one of the bonds sold, and so one investor bought 150,000 worth, another bought a million, and you know, and there are maybe 10 buyers, and those rates are about that, and I didn't have a chance to calculate it. I guess that's all I can
That's
say.
okay. It's close enough, okay?
Close enough. We try to do at least that well, hopefully better. So let me, before we get back to the revenue side, let me just talk about some of the priorities here on the spending side, and we'll get back to how we propose to pay for that. And part of that is the property tax. So overall staffing, as I sit here tonight and as we've talked with all the other departments, we're looking at the hiring of sometime after the middle of the year in #24, probably sometime in the third quarter, definitely no later than the fourth quarter, 9 new firefighter and paramedics, and that's because we have 3 shifts, a minimum of 3 on the shift. We actually have a minimum of 5, but we have an understanding right now with IFF Local 1236 that we are going to start we're going to open the station with, call it a jump company, which is 3, minimum of 3, and the mechanics of it are not unlike what happens on normal days when there are calls spread out, which doesn't happen that much anymore. But so you kind of make a commitment. If it comes in as a structure fire, we're jumping on the engine. If it comes in as a call to go to a house and pick up somebody who fell off a swing or something like that, we're jumping in the ambulance. But you make that commitment. At some point, every station is out of people, and we could do a callback and so forth. But it's a way to get open. It will actually enhance, for a short time anyway, it will enhance our response times to the southwest quadrant. But it's not the final solution. But we're very clear on where we need to be, because in 5 years, if there's no change in the pension crisis, we are getting to the point of deficit spending. And we have said as a policy, we don't do that in the city of DeKalb. So we have to grow into that, just like we have to grow into other things. Okay. Also, we're looking to hire 5 new police officers. That was a commitment made a couple years ago to get to 75 sworn officers. That includes the command staff. We have 6 right now in the command staff, including the chief. And so that would be 69 officers, patrol officers or sergeants. We have already hired a public works mechanic. It's working out very well. We talked about that about 6 months ago, something like that. But it didn't show up in last year's budget. It was something we decided to do, made sense. And so I've included that in this. On page 10, you can see how we're spreading out the staffing. And you see a bump there, and a lot of that has to do with station number 4.
Bill?
Yes.
Before you, I'm sorry to keep interrupting
No,
you, but
that's
I
good.
just didn't have a chance to talk to you before now. So I will be delighted to talk about this later, but I had a question about the lines such as 41600. I was just very interested in the wellness bonus for the police and the firefighters, and since we're talking about personnel and them, I wanted to hear about that wellness bonus.
Yeah.
How does that work? Is it, I've heard of some other systems
We
in
have
other
different programs. So
municipalities.
we have a very old traditional program where it's so many dollars a year, say $300 a year for certain kinds of wellness things, which includes maybe flu shots, maybe trips for your annual physical, things like that. But over the years, the fire contract has been out in front, and the police contractor, which is under negotiation right now, which I can't give you all the details of, but I can tell you it's also moving in this direction, is to create a 457 plan. Are you familiar with those? So it's for health insurance. It's where employees can put in money pre-tax
Yeah.
and take it out pre-tax, and you can, as long as you're paying on health care, you can do that through the year. It augments, because the cost of health care is one of the things that everybody faces, and nobody gets 100% of anymore, right? Because we can't afford it. But you can also take it with you when you leave. And another thing is a 115 trust, which is kind of along the same lines, but there are people who just don't ever take vacations. They just lose it. There's some way to cash that, or to invest that into a trust, depending on the number of hours you have at the end of the year. So we want to encourage people to take time off, but there are many that are dedicated and won't take it all and will lose it, and maybe there's a limited amount. It's not open-ended, but they can put the money into that trust. So there's another way they can help with their health care costs. And we have a very young police department, for example, right now, which means younger families, more trips to the doctor, more sensible savings along those lines. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay. And then, every age has their challenges mentally, but medically, and there are sometimes the complications get older, and you have to seek other examinations and attention, and so it can be used for that too. All right. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. So let's go sideways for a minute and talk about how we might levy taxes for the city of DeKalb.
Okay.
We've talked about this, and Paul, I'm going to just assume you're kind of up to speed on this. Otherwise, it's going to be a Bill Paul show. But if you have any questions, please do ask. We have proudly been trying to reduce our share of the aggregate property tax rate for quite a number of years now. And we've had some success at that. If you look on page 4 at the bottom, this is just the chart showing the city's EAV, equalized assessed value. The levy that we have, that the council has voted since 2014, and the rate. We could have gone back further, but this gives you a trend line showing we were growing in rate, and we hit a peak in 2017, and we've been coming down since. And now we're very comfortably below 9%, and we are hoping to get down even more. We'd also like to see 9% as our aggregate for every one of the 10 taxing bodies that appear on everybody's tax bill in the spring. This is a more complicated thing. Mayor Barnes has, and with the council's full support, has challenged the other taxing bodies in the context of multiple meetings called summits. We've had 2. We're going to have another one as the levy season goes into full metal, which is probably starting next week for us, and it is for other taxing bodies locally too. So probably be late October, early November, we'll have a 3rd meeting. And we'll see where we are, provided that our best guess is that the community EAV hold up. Now, Those of you who got assessment notices and live in DeKalb Township know that the equalization factor was very high, high as anybody can remember, 9.53%. And that means the value of your house has gone up. It also means your exposure to property tax has gone up. So but what can we do? What can we do to make sure that you pay either less or no more dollars out of pocket, even if the city's rate is down? And that equalization factor makes it very challenging to try to do that. Every year, at your seat there, you have, I don't know, it looks like a T, kind of a stumpy T. A lot of colors there. It shows two things, both for the city and for the library. From 2019 to this year, and the projection of where we might be with actual out-of-pocket tax on a house that a couple years ago would have had a market value of about $300,000 and a EAV of about $100,000. Now with the multipliers of the last couple of years, which have been pretty high, relatively speaking, and even allowing for homestead exemption and so forth, that city portion of the tax, I'm projecting, is going to be basically flat with last year. Had it not been for the high equalization factor, it would have been very substantially lower than anybody's memory. But that equalization factor is by state law. It's a trailing average of the last 3 years, or the average of the trailing 3 years. And last year we were 6.67%, so it's next year it will be down, but it won't be 2% like it was for many years. So we're going to still have to aggressively lower the tax. The other reason we want to lower the tax rate is that we found a couple years ago when we were doing that 2022-2024 financial plan, just an upgrade, kind of a placekeeper, I guess, in a way. We found that as we looked at communities to the east in King County, Geneva, St. Charles, Batavia, on and on, their aggregates, even though they're much bigger, and they were about 9%. And at that point, we were about 11.6%. Then we went down to about 10.5 and 10.1, and this year it should be down to about 9.5 or lower. And probably in the 2 years out, we'll have reached the goal of less than 9%. So that's what we're trying to do. At some point, the city, taking the lead, has to find a way to level off because of this structural problem we have, in my opinion, my humble opinion, because we have that unusual problem. And it doesn't mean everybody doesn't have problems, but that's our particular challenge. So that's where we are. What I'm proposing this year is what you see in this sheet, is to get to a rate of about 0.814, which is down dramatically from where it was this time last year. But that's the only way to get to a point where the homeowner for that imaginary home, while they may be cussing, hopefully not at us, they'll see that we've mightily tried to keep their out-of-pocket expense down, or no worse. So take a look, maybe suck that in. Now, the DeKalb Public Library portion of that on the lower part is part of our composite rate for our corporate levy, I should say, our corporate rate. At this point, the board hasn't approved the budget and the library board and the proposed levy, but I had some communication with the executive director late last week, and that's how I put this together. It looks like the library rate goes down, maybe even a little bit more than our percentage drop, and a few bucks less in terms of actual out-of-pocket costs. So I'm heartened by that. We'll see that the library board has to have discussion around, just like the council has to have discussion. But so the levy that I'm proposing has been in the proposed revenues for the city's operations since August, and it is on page top of page 5. And here you see another chart that's pretty much what I just handed out. It's $8,123,458. That is, you go back to page 4 in your background, or excuse me, page 3. That $8,123,459, or 8, it's a rounding thing, is basically the total of our obligation on, to be 100%, to fund 100% of the projected 2023-24 pension obligations. That's it, no more. We still have this shortfall. I think that's modest. I don't know how else to present it to you except to say I think that's a fair thing to ask for. Now, somebody could come back and say, well, yeah, we have pensions to pay for too, and we're gonna pay less. Well, we are obligated to pay 100% and to keep paying 100% and then some in order to get to 2040 or 2050 and be legal. So this isn't a wishful thing, it's an obligation we have, so. Yes, Tom? Oh,
Just a comment overall, the levy's always a
yeah, yeah,
key discussion point for us. And we're gonna ask 8.1 million, right? So we're up 14% over the prior year.
yes,
So if the homeowner, who has virtually flat taxes, is a way that there's a partial sharing happening between the growth of new construction, exclude the inflationary aspect of what your house may be worth now, right? So set that aside, because that's not realized in any sense, but new construction's real, and that's new EAV. Well, that would pretend that that number came in at about 14%, because
Yeah.
that's what our tax levy is with 0 on existing homes. So with EAV growth of 14%, new construction growth, right? I think the homeowner is benefiting from this standpoint, and from my perspective, of paying nothing towards the increased cost of wages,
yes,
benefits,
yes.
which are clearly rising in the neighborhood. Wages overall in the nation are 4.5%, 5%, real terms. I know the contracts locally, recently the school settled on 4 to 5%, so the homeowner's really not having to contribute to that via their property tax
Right.
levy on this. So I think the council has had a longstanding, way back when, view of trying to keep that thing flat, and it's positive to be able to do that. To the pension issue, it remains the same burden. It's actually grown
Yes,
slightly. I mean, last time we talked, it was 90 million in arrears, and now we're 95 million in arrears.
97.
Yet we pay 100% of the obligated amount. And it's key to understand that the obligated amount that the actuary calculates includes the ramp. It's not
Yes.
just the
Yes.
current piece.
Right.
You're paying towards the ramp.
right.
And we haven't caught up. We haven't caught up dime one. So there is one of my concerns over the long run, is how we attack that. Obviously, the 10-year push-out it's a significant amount
Yes.
Yeah.
to bring that ramp down and flatten it quite a bit, and pushes it out to 50. So it'll reduce that burden substantially, but still we'll be facing this $800-900, maybe $1 million increase per year on a go-forward basis. So certainly something to keep in front of all of us.
That's a really good point, Tom. Do we have any idea at all what the impact of that 10-year push-out will be? How much will we see in the, say, 2025 budget? It's just kind of a what-if question that I was,
For the,
for our funding requirement. If
Yeah.
downstate, they push that out
Yeah.
10 years.
yeah, and it's going to include the 9 new firefighters, which are not yet counted. We counted the 9 that got us to the the shift level 5, they were in this year's fire pension number. That just to take fire for one example, but we're talking about another 9, so it'll be that much and more because wages will have gone up, and there's then that prediction of 20 years, and then the pension whenever that's invoked. So I don't have a composite thing because here's our problem.
And I didn't expect you to,
No,
but
but
I was thinking about that as a mechanism to get it out front of people, to say, you know what, here's the impact of what this projected change is
Absolutely.
going to be.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to say we're sitting down, we're actually, I don't want to say any more than this. Just last week, the chief and I, Chief Thomas and I sat down with the fire union leadership, and we're talking about the next 5 to 10 years. We're going to talk about that. We have another year before the contract is up, but we want to start now because basically we want to see if we can creatively do some things. And by the way, that the fire union at the state level, AFFI, is an ally with the municipal league in trying to get the pension change, and that's helped a lot, both parties helping each other on that. But here's the frustration for me, and Tom knows this, so and you all do. IMRF, which is a pretty good system for everybody else who is in the state fire and police pension, is 100% funded across the board, and it's a different system. It's an open amortization system. It's based on the assumption that, like a bank looks at a lender, basically, say you take out a 15-year home equity loan, 10-year home equity loan, and you see an opportunity to refinance that, or you want to add another patio or build, raise the roof or do something as you're going in, so you're going to borrow some more, but you're going to wait for that time when you can re-amortize it, and it just continues to roll. It seems to me that somebody who spends much of the day looking at numbers ought to be able to, who could be assigned to this and nothing else, figure out a system. Also, obviously the nature of the benefits is a big part of that as you go through this. Ought to be able to figure out how this closed system could be converted to an open system to the benefit of municipalities like ours. And I even took, Mayor's not here tonight, but he and I have had this conversation. I said, if somebody asked me what would that be worth, I said it'd be worth $100,000. It would be worth a year's salary to somebody who's an accountant with a great accountancy background and knows something about the actuarial ins and outs of these pension funds, to do nothing else, maybe come out in 2 months, maybe come out in 6 months, maybe after 12 months, and have real plans that can be put before the legislature that are just ironclad. Obviously, a lot of negotiation. Once it hits, it's one thing to do the numbers, it's another thing to see how that plays out and who's going to support it. I still think that's not a crazy idea, because nobody has the time to do this. We've worked on it internally. We'll work on it for a couple weeks and decide we'd have to do nothing else all day but to do this, because there are so many variables. Every person who is in the fund has a dozen variables. I might live to this time. I've got this many kids. I have a spouse. I don't have a spouse. I'm injured. All those things times whatever, hundreds. So in the end, what I'm betting on here and suggesting to you is that we have 5 years here, 4 years really, fiscal years that are not yet have not yet begun, where we can figure this out. Because if we don't, if you look at this, where are we in 5 years? We're still black, but we're, it's within the, a percent one way or another. You get the 270,000 out of 50 million. Could be below that, it could be better. And I would hope whoever is sitting here in 4 years from now would be able to say, boy, it's a lot better than we thought it was going to be. But it could also be in 26 that it's starting to do this because of the the pricing and all the rest of it. So this is something, when I use the word crisis, it's a crisis. It is, Moody's asked, I'll stop here, but Moody's talked to us for about an hour about this more than anything. Because 2 years ago, we had our rating lowered because of this. That was before we were beginning to see the dollars. We had a couple of commitments from large industrial companies, but the dollars hadn't come in. The EAV was speculative. Moody's doesn't make bets on your best guess of what's going to happen. They want to see it. Now they saw the EAV, and they could say, yep, it's working. And they saw this, and they said, yep, you've gone from a 1-year window to 5, great. But there's still no end to it. And a lot of crazy things can happen. Look what's happening in the Mideast. Look, you know what I mean? To turn the market upside down. So we are fortunate to be in a position to buy some time here, but we have to be careful how we project our spending over the next 5 years, because without that solution, we are underwater. I'll stop. Questions? General fund. So that's the main part of the general fund.
Just,
we still have talk about the levy, though. You might probably want.
Just come back around to Mr. Perkins' point. It wouldn't be a terrible idea to ask the actuary to provide you a couple of ramps along those lines of what that 10-year thing would be worth. It's material.
He provided us. I asked him for a pension modeler that had certain assumptions. We only got two variables. One was the years before it had to be 100 or 90%
2040.
funded. And then the other was, do you want it 90% or 100? Do you want to pay 90% or 100%? The answer was we should pay 100%, because otherwise we're running interest along with everything else, and it's almost half again as much by the time you get to 2040. So that was all he could do. He said that. Then I was talking about there's nobody out there who's got the time. He said, I don't have the time for this. And this guy, he's not only working for us, he's working for those two new boards at the state level. His firm is. So he's got the best talent in the state on the actuarial side, and he's saying, I don't have anybody I could spare. We're working this all day long, day in, day out. I don't know, but so we need somebody with the old garters on the shoulders and the green eye shade, and just all day long, just doing this. So we'll get there. We'll get there. All right. So on the levy, I usually come in with 3 examples. Say we could do this, this, and this. I did the best I could with keeping in mind what we owe to be the 100%, as Tom was explaining, to get that at 100% funding level for this year, and our obligation, and then keeping in mind that we still have to pay some extra. I wasn't trying to grab that with an even higher levy. So that, I think, is the lowest levy we should be doing at this point. I welcome your thoughts on that, because I want to go to the council with something next week.
My thought, you're getting a 14% increase in property tax.
Yeah.
So that being a material portion of our total revenue, right?
Yeah.
It's, what did we say on your chart? It's 16% of the total gross. So 14% of 16% is a material increase in your total revenue. So from an operating standpoint, you're still generating a positive cash flow, right? Fund balance still grows even with this. I think that all of that remains in reasonable balance, and the fund balance in total remains in a solid position. So if we ever wanted to pay down more pension or to ramp it, some alternative method, you would have some room in your reserve to do something along that line.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that played a positive. That fund balance had to play a positive
It did.
in the bond
Big,
rating.
big. Yeah. And that reduced our pricing. That's right. Okay, anything else? on that? Okay. Paul, any questions? Okay. I will answer any questions you may have on the, by the way, you have a lot of numbers here. Every one of the departments by division and by program is represented here in these numbers, and they add up to the general summary pages that are on page 8 and previous to that. I also have spent a little time on the, just reviewing, we're about where we thought we'd be for the motor fuel tax fund, for our general capital fund, which is Fund 400, and the vehicle fund. I want to spend a little time on the water fund, if I may, which is our key enterprise fund. We have others, the airport, the refuse and recycling, but that's the one that also touches all of our residents and businesses, obviously the provision of potable water. I want to thank Brian Favor for a lot of the detail that's in your background tonight, and also for the steady leadership in the water division of our Public Works Department. The city is in a good position to attract new business because of what's been done in that department for the last 20 years. I will say there's nothing in the background about this, but this had to come out about a week ago, or almost a week ago. But next Monday night, Brian and I are bringing to the council a proposal to do an upgrade to our systems study, a planned study, which can show over the next 5 to 10 years where we need to be for a variety of reasons, not just for growth, industrial growth, which is something we need to be attentive to, but also to quality of the water, changing EPA regulations, expectations about residential growth, which hasn't been a big thing in DeKalb, but eventually there'll be some in different areas. Water pressure issues, to finally wrestle some of those to the ground. We're looking at the very least the digging of a new well in the next couple of years, but we'll see what the study tells us. It'll probably be, interestingly, not down south, but because of hydraulic pressures and the system and where the deepest aquifers are, probably on the west side, Brian. And once it gets the water in the system, we've got the volume. Pressure-wise, probably have to do another tank somewhere on the east side, down toward the southeast, southeast side, eventually. And there's treatment, but if we put the new well out west, and I'm previewing this, we can also run that water through a substantial treatment facility that we have, water treatment facility that we have on the west side. So that's coming to the council on Monday night as a consideration, and we'll talk about that. We have a firm in mind that has worked with us before. It's on our list of preferred engineering firms that does this kind of consultancy. And so when we come here next year, we'll be able to have some specific projects to recommend, in addition to repairing and replacing old main and so forth, something that is more proactive, prospective in terms of what we're going to need 5-10 years from now. So that I'm confident this firm that we're going to recommend will take us there. But the water operations begin on page 11 in your background. There's a little bit of history there, Paul, as well. Number of wells, we have deep wells and shallow wells and so forth. The water revenue. When we get to the budget document itself, we'll have much more detail, but this is a little bit of a taste of the kinds of information that we like to put in the budget about where we've been, where we are now in terms of both revenue and also in terms of capital projects to keep the system not only up to what the EPA requirements are, but what our growing community needs. So list of projects on page 14 through 23, and some tentative projects, 24. The SCADA upgrade, as you know, about the fourth line down under tentative FY24 projects on page 14. $505,000. That's also incorporating the it's about $156,000, $154,000 for the water study upgrade, so that's included in that. That would be, which includes, SCADA system, of course, tracks the usage, the operation, the levels in the wells, the pumping, what's going on, does it all day long, all night long. It also gives warnings to us because Brian loves to work, but he's not here all the time. So it's a good system, but like everything else, software and hardware change, so it's time we looked at that. And I want to thank, Tom was here. I wasn't here when the council and the Finance Advisory Committee had long discussions about this, but there's been a real solid commitment to taking some of that water revenue every year, transferring it on the capital side to keep up, because I wish we had that revenue built into our streets right now, but it's another thing. We'll probably have to come back next year. There's no tax increase to help with the streets. We've been stretching and we've been taking advantage of grants at the state and federal level. We're going to finish these darn bridges, which have been tough projects this year. And our city engineer, Zach Gills, mightily pressed on all those fronts, but eventually we're going to need more money, particularly for the asphalt replacement. I don't have to tell you, you can drive almost anywhere and you're going to come across, ooh, look at that, that's not good. And that might not even be on the list, whatever you're driving over. So we have to figure that out. We'll have some options for you. Wish that cannabis we're eventually going to start generating some revenue from both of those places. Wish that would be enough. I don't think it's going to be enough, so we'll have to do some other things.
So to that point, Bill, so the fact that we anticipated both bridges coming online this year and only one is going to come online, we'll see that in the fund balances then, right? There'll be a fund balance shift. One will be higher than we expected.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I'm coming to you. I think we're going to get this done between now and Thursday morning, a budget amendment for FY23. Because of that, we can only, you can't make fund transfers without council permission. And then we have some line items that are going to be, one's going to be below and the other one's going to be underspent. So we'll have to clean it up, true it up. Yeah. Questions about that?
Just one comment on the
Yes,
water
Scott.
thing. Looking at the recap on the capital fund itself, over the 5-year period with the rate increases and the transfers out of water revenues, as anticipated, the fund balance grows from 2.6 to 6 million. From a competitive advantage standpoint, for companies looking into the area, I would think our water system would be
It's big.
a positive
Very
situation
positive.
and funded.
And water, some of these huge buildings that seem the norm anymore, but were beyond our wildest dreams 4 or 5 years ago, use the water not only for their employee restrooms and processes, but also for cooling now in different ways. And so we're pumping more, and we're getting some more revenue, which is good. We had seen actually a drop-off, hadn't we, Brian, for a number of years until about 2021, and now it's turned around, more than leveled off. We're increasing now pretty steadily every year. And so we're trying to put that to work, as Tom said, and put it into the infrastructure, also on occasion, some of the vehicles and equipment that are also needed. We have to leave that open.
We can't close the door.
Open meeting, yeah, gotta leave it open. Sorry, good idea.
Thank you, but we can't do it.
See you later. No.
I did that once too.
One last thing for my presentation. If you look on page 17, we've got our best guess right now. There'll be a little back and forth on this in the next month, but the citywide fund balances are there for you, except for the DeKalb Library Board's work, which we will incorporate when the budget is presented to you. We are meeting again the week of Thanksgiving, that Monday. I would say usually we set aside that Wednesday, but Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, I don't think. So we'll bear down.
We'll get it done on Monday.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you. So, thank you. We're all want to hear that. So, that will be another couple hundred pages beyond what you've got here, but I think you'll like this coming budget. We're going to have a lot more pictures and things of what it's like to serve City of DeKalb. Questions? Okay.
I just want to say you guys do a great job with this document. It's so informative, easy to follow, and it is very appreciated because it's a lot of information that you're giving, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank these ladies here for.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a
much of
team
that.
effort. I'm sure. You guys all do a great job. So.
please.
I'm just curious with some of the benefits and improvements that are incorporated into this. Are there ancillary benefits that go to our business owners and homeowners as a result of this? One thing I'm thinking of with a new fire station, does it help on an insurance rate calculation?
Yes.
Yes.
It does. I mean, great question. We take pieces of this and we could bury you with stuff that we think is good. The ISO rating, that we're at 2, it's a solid 2. I don't know if we can get to 1. I think to get to 1, we have to have a lot more people doing things, and there are issues with that, obviously, just cost. But we're solid there, and what we've seen in building that 4th fire station solidifies, because we probably we're starting to back up. Now we can, we're covering the ground. We were more often, increasingly, I guess you would say, sending calls, or meeting calls by sending apparatus and people from the far side of town to the southwest side, and that wasn't always the best way. That was the rationale for doing this now rather than 2 years from now or 3 years from now. So that's one thing. Property tax, that's another. We want to deliver on that. We promised it. Everybody wants to do it. We got to do it. It's not just because it's the right thing to do. It's because we all benefit from that as well. And interesting thing here, these new companies that are generating this awesome EAV are not even the principal reason why there's such a large equalization factor, because that's largely the calculation of all the homes sold and properties sold. Obviously, those companies down on Gurler aren't getting bought and sold. They may be someday, but that's not what's generating it this year or next year or last year. So we'll get through this. It's a bubble in a way of a unique kind, but there will be ebbs and flows in that equalization factor. And our township assessors who were buried in calls over the last 4 or 5 days have been, and we have 2 that affect us, Afton and DeKalb Township, obviously. They play it by the book. They play it pretty straight ahead. And you may not like it, but it's true. There's not any willing deal. Now, people can appeal, and I was tentative with EAV because there will be a lot more appeals this year than there have been in the past. Doesn't mean they're going to be upheld, but they're going to be a lot more in number. And some existing firms may say we'd like a break here. We're finally hitting our stride, and now we got to pay more, and they're not under an abatement or some kind of program. I don't know if I answered your question, but so benefits, also the spending that we're putting into, I was saying, streets, we'd like to do a lot more, but what if we hadn't been, we had basically tripled our commitment to streets 3 years ago. On the water side, Brian has a very well-managed division. Andy Rye, who takes care of our streets and facilities, and does well with the money that he has to work with, and all that is a benefit. We do more with less every day, and we try. The trick is not to make it look that way, or complain that we're doing more with less, so that people don't have quite the warm feeling about it. And it's just true. You go through. How is it that after Corn Fest for 3 days, the place at 10 o'clock on Sunday night looks like there never was anything here? How does that happen? I mean, and we do it with the same number of people, basically, in the street department. So, and how is it that we're seeing less in the way of violent crime? And we're trying to grow our police department, but that isn't something you just turn on a switch and it happens overnight. And again, doing more with less. And Chief is responsible for that, leading that effort. On the fire side, the things that we do and show up and we get there on time, even though we have these holes in our geographic system right now, and we get there and we're doing more calls every year. So all these things we have to take into account, and we're trying to grow in pace or a little bit behind pace, to be honest with you. And we haven't been bulging our administrative staff, I can tell you that. I'd rather see the money go into operations because that's what people say they want.
Thank you.
Just a general question about population. I know it's been a while since we had population decrease, and you look at the overall head count. Certainly, that has to, from a community standpoint, people ask a little bit about that. So we're increasing head count a fair amount. Is our population growing? Do we have a feel for that?
You raise a good. I suppose it's shame on me. At this point we should be investing in a special census, and I was reluctant the first year to recommend that because you don't know. I have a feeling that the census happened at the worst possible time during the COVID year, and there were people who just maybe they're living somewhere else temporarily and they're back. There were people who were just disgusted with life during that year, so many, and just didn't want to fill out this thing that comes in mail, or somebody comes to the door, I don't want to talk to you, go away. My life is miserable, I don't need to talk to you. And then in the middle of all that, jobs were lost because of the restaurants being closed, all the hospitality, the theater, everything was closed. So I think we got hit hard with it. And we're a transit community anyway, with the turnover in students every year. So it's time we do that. It's real money to do that, to get it done right. And but then we know. I don't think we lost what our record is saying, because if you're not counted, you're not counted. So you can't say, oh, I meant to fill that out. It's not counted. Too bad. So it's time to go back and do that. Times are more stable. We probably should do that.
Well, it helps with state revenue.
That would help with state shared revenue.
Yeah.
Yep. State income tax.
Might pay for it.
Personal property replacement, the whole thing. Motor fuel tax. Right. That's on me. We'll get it done. Anything else?
After me.
So Susan, tomorrow can you, just kidding.
Yeah,
Just
what do you
kidding.
want, census or-
Just kidding. You want a budget or a census, Nicholas?
Pick one.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you guys would like to talk about or discuss or question?
Well, we'll have a chance next time on the
Yes,
full budget
we
package.
will.
We can ask specific
Yes, we
items and
will.
hopefully clear up any.
And we'll have more information then
Right.
as well, yes. We'll have more hard data by
Yeah.
then, yeah. Thank you because I know all of you worked so hard to develop these budgets and get this data in and back and forth negotiating, and I really do appreciate it. And I thank you guys very much, and I liked the writing even better than usual this year, so, yeah. So thank you. Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, please say